Kazakhstan, 30 years of independence. Once we were part of one country, we were close neighbors, 15 republics of the Soviet Union. Much has changed since 1991, but one thing has remained the same. We're still close neighbors today. How did the relationships between our nations develop in the past? What is happening now, and what are our plans for the future? How do people in our countries live and interact with each other, Kazakhstan and its neighbors, in a special Kazakh TV project, Close Neighbors. Early afternoon, Astrakhan and the queues of Kurmangazy. Boldness, you know, this is boldness, this is strength, you see? It charges you with energy. Wind. There are such works when the earth gallops and then stops abruptly. Boldness and strength. You can hear the untamable soul of the Kazakh people in this melody. In many respects, it's very consonant with the mysterious Russian soul. Between the Astrakhan Kremlin and the Moscow Kremlin, there are 1,200 kilometers. It's twice as far from Akorda to the Red Square. But is distance a hindrance to friendship? We see each other today, we help each other, and we have a close and beautiful friendship. From the point of view of economics and structure, Russia is the closest partner. To some extent, we're even similar to each other, and our goals, including our agendas, have a lot in common in many ways. The Russian Federation is a state in Eastern Europe and North Asia. It borders with 18 countries, including Kazakhstan. Territory: 17,125,191 square kilometers, first place in the world. Population as of January 1st, 2021, more than 146 million people. Capital: Moscow. National currency: Russian ruble. Diplomatic relations between the Russian Federation and the Republic of Kazakhstan were established on October 22, 1992. The biggest country in the world. Just think for a moment. Its area is almost equal to the surface area of the planet Pluto. The longest land border between Kazakhstan and Russia is more than 7,500 kilometers. And there are also maritime borders. First of all, Kazakhstan has managed to establish constructive, mutually beneficial relations primarily with its neighbors. We have solved the issues of borders. These borders are internationally recognized. They are established. In this regard, Kazakhstan has no issues. This is a very important achievement. Over the years of independence, Russia and Kazakhstan have delimited the border along its entire length, which is more than 14,000 kilometers. And now, it's several kilometers of friendship. Russia, a country of unique diversity, natural and not only, a concise collection of amazing facts that begin with the word the most. Siberian miracle, Lake Baikal, the deepest in the world. They say that if suddenly there is luck and they catch all the fish at the same time, then every Russian will receive more than 1 kilogram of fish. But so far, no one has tried it. Baikal has more water than the Baltic Sea, 23,000 cubic kilometers of water. And it would seem, where does Kazakhstan have to do with it? Just a couple of examples. According to one of the versions, this is the birthplace of Genghis Khan's mother. Also, in northern Kazakhstan, there is also Lake Baikal. And the most immediate relation is the Trans-Siberian Railway. But more on that later. From Baikal to the Baltic, this is St. Petersburg, Hermitage. 3 million unique artifacts. If you're willing to spend 8 hours a day to see them all, brace yourself. It will take you 25 years. And it's not a fact that this will be enough. The collections are constantly replenished with new exhibits. At one time, our senior colleagues always said that if you walk through the halls of Hermitage and have a rest, then each time you come there in the morning, afternoon, and evening, you will see a different part of the museum. Because it can be one thing in the morning, another in the afternoon, and a third in the evening.
Это может быть одно, днем другое, вечером третье.
And this is an exhibit from Kazakhstan, a stone of Tamerlan, found by Kanishzatbayev in the Ulutel Mountains. Its copy can be found in the Karaganda Museum. The city of bridges and museums, the birthplace of the famous Eurasian, Lev Gumilyov. According to Kazakh tourists, it's one of the most popular places in Russia. But Moscow is still in the lead, in all senses. All roads here lead to the main symbol of Russia, Kremlin, the largest medieval fortress in the world. The length of this walls is over 2,000 meters. The chimes in the Spasskaya Tower are not ringing yet. The students are glancing at the clock. They don't want to be late for classes. Just so you know, the largest mechanical clock in Russia is 3 meters wider than the clocks on Spasskaya Tower, on the facade of the main building of Moscow State University. The university is called a city within a city. Only the population is constantly renewed and it's impossible to register here, but you can study here. And there are a lot of Kazakhs at the main university in Russia. We have our own established countries, educational institutions, with which we have a long-standing relations. One of them is Moscow State University. We have student and teachers exchange. Nur-Sultan Lev Gumilyov Eurasian National University. In 2000, the Kazakhstan branch of Moscow State University was opened on its basis, the first in the CIS. This is the merit of the first president. He came up with such an initiative, a Eurasian initiative, to bring one of the best universities in the world to Kazakhstan to train specialists. At the moment, there are 5 directions, 5 faculties at the branch. This is the only branch in the CIS that sends students to the main headquarters of the university, where they study for a year, write and defend their thesis. You know, graduates of Kazakhstan's branch are represented in almost all spheres of the national economy and business. Students see the world as one, and they want to see only good things in this world. We must continue to develop such a good life and various integration cultural events for their benefit. And here again facts with the word the most. Students from Kazakhstan rank first among foreign students studying in Russia in general, and at Moscow State University in particular. It's also interesting that the idea of the Eurasian Union was mentioned for the first time precisely within these walls.
Как известно, эта идея принадлежит первому президенту Казахстана.
As you know, this idea belongs to the first president of Kazakhstan, Basты Nursultan Nazarbayev. In March 1994, he gave a lecture at the Moscow State University and initiated the idea of the Eurasian Union, which then gradually transformed into the idea of the Eurasian Economic Union.
Трансформировалась уже в идею Евразийского экономического союза.
Eurasian Economic Union, created on May 29, 2016. A single service market was established for many sectors of the economy, a joint labor market, and general conditions for income and taxation. For me, Nursultan Nazarbayev will always remain an outstanding figure not only in Russian and Kazakh politics, but also in international politics. He is a person of an amazing mindset and amazing depth of knowledge. He is the one who put forward the initiative for integration in the post-Soviet space, Eurasian space, a man who supported the idea of a dialogue of civilization.
пространстве и евразийском пространстве. Человек, который поддерживал идеи диалога цивилизаций.
Президент неоднократно.
Both our presidents, the first and the second, have repeatedly emphasized that the economic aspect is key. It's the most important thing, because everything else is connected with politics, with geopolitics. It was very important for us to restore effective ties in the economic sphere. In Kazakhstan, there are about 8,000 enterprises with Russian participation, over 3,000 joint ventures. Russian companies are among the 5 key investors. Over the past 10 years, Russia has invested over $12.5 billion in Kazakhstan. Moscow, Litnikovskaya Street, Eurasian Economic Commission. Work in a new environment.
Ну, вообще, в целом, по всему миру, если взять...
In general, if you consider the trend after the pandemic all over the world, there is a certain commotion because any type of crisis, to some extent, affects consumer behavior. People began to fear that there would be no access to products. Logistics companies began to rise in price because access and generally the distribution of products between countries slowed down. Well, because there were restrictions.
Между странами замедлилось, ну, потому что были ограничения.
But even in these difficult circumstances, the Eurasian Economic Union coped with the tasks set by reality quite well.
Потому что у нас уровень самообеспеченности высокий довольно-таки, 93%.
Because the level of self-sufficiency in our countries is quite high, 93%. There is an insignificant dependence on imports. Within the framework of the Union, we managed to organize these deliveries. I must also say that we have created an operational platform for the exchange of information, the purpose of which is to provide our countries with a product that was in short supply. And the operational platform has started working. In my opinion, it's quite effective as a mechanism for the food security of our countries.
Площадка заработала, она как механизм продовольственной безопасности стран, на мой взгляд, довольно-таки эффективна.
The union was working, cargo and goods were on their way. By the way, up to 80% of Kazakhstan's exports and imports pass through the territory of the northern neighbor. And finally, the Trans-Siberian Railway, the longest railway in the world. From Moscow to Vladivostok, the railway line crosses 8 time zones, 16 rivers, and almost 9 dozen cities, including Kazakhstan's Petropavl. The city is a junction station, especially on the Trans-Siberian Railway. It was impossible to bypass Siberia and Petropavl. Petropavl is called the northern gates of Kazakhstan. Here the path passed mainly from the southern part of our Kazakhstan, central Kazakhstan, to the northern part. At the time, the Trans-Siberian Railway was the only railway to the Far East, Western Europe, and the western part of Russia. Petropavl is still impossible to avoid. By the way, when making an appointment under the station clock, do not forget to mention what time you mean, Moscow time or Nur-Sultan. A station for two. This is what this place is called. And that's because this station with all its infrastructure belongs to the South Ural Railway. In other words, Russia leases the station, communications, and so on from Kazakhstan. As a rent payment, Kazakh side uses railway stations, which are located on the territory of Russia, but are operated by the Kazakh side. A little more about joint projects.
Наиболее дееспособным органом, который был создан в рамках СНГ, это был Совет.
The most capable body which was created within the framework of the CIS was the Council for Railway Transport. We solved all the issues together because we are connected by the same standards, the same technologies, and the same language. And in this sense, this was a good basis for further growth of cooperation. We, together with our Kazakh colleagues, once carried out the first transit of goods from China to Europe. Then we reached the speed of movement 14 days. Today, the speed of movement is 1,120 kilometers, even 1,200 kilometers, and this opens up very good prospects.
Скорость движения 1000, по-моему, 120 километров, даже 200 километров. И это открывает очень хорошие перспективы.
Trade hub between Europe and Asia and the creation of Eurasian intelligent transport systems. This will make it possible to use the existing infrastructure as efficiently as possible and optimize the costs of carriers and manufacturers of goods. Projects for the near future.
Была инициатива премьер-министра Казахстана о рассмотрении...
There was an initiative of the Prime Minister of Kazakhstan to consider the feasibility of creating Eurasian distribution networks. This is a unique initiative. We are now working together with the Eurasian Development Bank, and we study this issue with the support of the United Nations.
Организация Объединенных Наций, сельскохозяйственной и продовольственной, проводится работа по изучению этого вопроса.
And there are also waterways. Russia is the only state which territory is washed by 12 seas, including the Caspian Sea, the so-called 13th Sea. Until now, its status has not been determined. Whether it is the sea or the lake is also a point of contact. It splashes both of the coast of Russia and Kazakhstan. The Caspian direction is the most important in the Kazakh-Russian relations. Oil and gas sector.
Доля сырьевого
The share of raw materials exports is quite significant in the economies of our countries. Both countries are interested in diversifying their economic landscape, and we have similar goals. The priority of the bilateral partnership is cooperation in the exploration, development, production, transportation of hydrocarbons.
Если в рамках СНГ, да, Россия...
Within the CIS, Russia is a leading key partner. The main export-import activity in this area is of course carried out with Russia. But in a broader global context, Russia is one of the key players in the energy oil market of Kazakhstan, including the gas sector.
Газовую сферу.
Чистопрудный Boulevard, Embassy of Kazakhstan, small museum. The main milestones of the joint 30-year journey are on the stands. Photos, interactive panels. Of the 89 regions of Russia, 72 have economic relations with Kazakhstan. Cross-border trade is the busiest. It makes up almost 70% of trade turnover between the two states. The relationship is close, and not only in economy. In the Astrakhan region, there is the largest Kazakh community in Russia. Basically, this is Altanzhar, Baybek in the Krasnoyarsk region. This is Kalinina in our region. These are basically 3 or 4 villages where Kazakhs live compactly, and the culture, language, traditions, and customs are very well developed. The village of Altanzhar, the great Kyushu Kurmangazy Sagarbayev spent the last years of his life here. This is also where he was buried. I know Russian people. Nogay, one of them, was my father, who stood at the origins of the creation of the image of Kurmangazy in the Astrakhan region. At least they tried to take care of his grave. Until 1963, the village had a central estate called Red Kazakh. Then the collective farms were enlarged, united, and given a name, Kurmangazy. Although we live in Russia, we still have Kazakh language lessons in our schools. We have music schools, art schools, where they teach how to play on the Kazakh musical instrument, the Kazakh dombra. One of the most successful Kazakh-Russian projects of the independence era, regional cultural center named after Kurmangazy. It was opened in October 2005. This complex was built at the expense of Astrakhan and 3 regions of Kazakhstan. We promote and popularize the culture of the Kazakh people. It is a great honor for us to bear this title and work in this center, to attract a lot of tourists to visit us. Within the framework of the project, the complex Efnaul, there are several yurts, each has its own presentation. We show different traditional rites of the Kazakh people. This is betashar, bisike salu, and others. This whole ceremony is shown specifically for our guests and for our tourists. The complex is generally popular among tourists, so we decided to look into one of the halls where there happened to be a rehearsal. And again from the Astrakhan region to the very center of the country. Golden Moscow Autumn, Chistoprudny Boulevard. People walk along the alleys enjoying the warm sunny days. Monument to the great Kazakh enlightener. The figure of the poet is made of bronze. Granite pedestal, decorated with national patterns and the inscription, Eternal Creator of the Immortal Word. We have published a solid volume dedicated to Abai. This volume includes his famous, beautiful, and well-known words of edification. These words of wisdom are not only beneficial for the Kazakh people, Kazakhstan residents, but also to no less extent for the Russians and for the people in general. He is a word classic, of course. He is standing on the same level as Leo Tolstoy, no doubt. The oldest and most famous publishing house in the world is Художественная литература, art literature, formed in 1930 on the initiative of Maxim Gorky. These walls remember many classics, including Kazakh ones, Abdejamil Nurpiyisov, Oljas Süleymanov, Mukhtar Auezov. As for Jambul, this is also our historical author. The story of how the poet Jambul Jabayev helped the publisher Georgy Pryakhyn to talk to the first president of Kazakhstan. It happened several years ago when the biography of the legendary Akın was published in the publishing house. Thanks to this publication, I talked with your president, the first president of Kazakhstan. The name Jambul served as a kind of pass. It even worked on the security, recalls Georgy Pryakhyn. Well, he was very positive about that. It was on the eve of the anniversary of the Great Victory Day. I said to him, "Here is the famous Leningraders are my children. The publishing house remembers this wonderful writer, poet. This publishing house unites all Soviet or post-Soviet intelligentsia." And so I handed him this book. Nursultan Nazarbayev wondered that even I knew Jambul. They know Jambul not only in the publishing house. He's honored in St. Petersburg. More recently, a monument was restored in Moscow. Exhibition of achievements of the national economy. It is estimated that every 8th person living on the planet has visited this place. Since 2014, when the revival of this exhibition began, from that moment on, the revival of this entire territory, the Central Alley, began. Well, again, you cannot do without a short catalog of unique facts. One of the most beautiful buildings of this place is the recently renovated pavilion at number 11. This remarkable pavilion is undoubtedly the pearl of our exhibition. A 3-span arch on the main facade, there are bas-reliefs with ethnic ornaments, and the sculptures, an unnamed steelmaker and collective farmer, and here is the poet Jambul Jabayev with a book in his hands, and the leader of the production, Shaghanak Birsiev, with ears of wheat. You know, I feel proud about my country, and I'm not just saying this. Thanks to an agreement signed in 2011 between Russia and Kazakhstan, this pavilion received a second life. The first life began in 1937. Then the pavilion was rebuilt several times until recently it was like this, and it was called the Metallurgy Pavilion. Fortunately, most of the historical drawings have survived. Several years of painstaking work, and the pavilion has acquired its unique appearance and former glory. First of all, the stunning Arc de Triomphe has been restored, which visitors can see from the central alley. Secondly, a dome and a spire have been installed, which can be seen here in the atrium of the pavilion. The restorers had to work hard on the glass dome and restore this graceful spire. The work was successful. The dome shimmers with bright colors in the rays of the sun. National patterns complement the impression. These columns that you see, these lamps and the chandeliers, there is absolutely no digression here. Everything has been restored according to historical drawings. Everything that in the distant 50s took our grandparents' breath away now pleases and delights our contemporaries. By the way, the agreement with Russia was concluded for 50 years, and the rental price is only 1 ruble per year. We see great interest not only from Muscovites and residents of Russia who come here to visit us, but also from tourists who come here from other countries and not only from the CIS countries. To walk from the pavilion along the main alley and see one of the main landmarks. It's impossible to miss this, the launch of the Vostok rocket. It is a copy of the same rocket on which Yuri Gagarin took off to space from the Baikonur Cosmodrome. Space Complex Baikonur, the world's first cosmodrome, founded on January 12, 1955. Leased to the Russian Federation. Annual fees $115 million annually. Lease terms until 2050. A symbol of Kazakh-Russian cooperation and aspiration for the future. This is a strategic industry, and of course, this is primarily due to the fact that Baikonur is leased by Russia. Baikonur is the legacy of the Soviet Union. This is a common heritage of both Russia and Kazakhstan. It's clear that it's logical that Russia has both the experience and the capabilities to operate this complex, and Kazakhstan is interested in cooperation with Russia in the space field because Russia is one of the leading powers in the space industry. He said, let's go. 60 years later, and now going into space, this phrase sounds a little different. Let's go to work. Well, or make a movie. For the first time in the history of mankind, a film crew went from Baikonur to the International Space Station. The film was presented here as well. Dubai, Expo, Russian Pavilion. Colorful on the outside, captivating on the inside. This interactive sculpture of the human brain is a symbol of the achievements of mankind. Impressive. New technologies and space perspectives through the eyes of a Kazakh schoolgirl. Not so long ago, Russian actress Yulia Peresild went into space to shoot a film. I think this is a big breakthrough for the film industry and for the space industry in Russia. And due to the fact that Kazakhstan and Russia are developing at the same speed, this is a very big breakthrough for Kazakhstan too. It's just cosmic. 3 decades of friendship between two independent states, amid a turbulent time, COVID, economic and political transformations. Even the pandemic did not stop this process, the so-called creation of a progressive society, the strengthening of friendship and close relations between our people. In the end, we had a common past and we share a lot of similar values. So in spite of everything, there are still many decades of friendship and cooperation ahead. A symbolic fact, on our way home, we saw such a picture. The challenge is accepted. Let's start. Kazakhstan, 30 years of independence, a new look at a long-standing relationship, the longest border, the new life of the Kazakh Pavilion, and the trade hub between Europe and Asia. how to perform Q by the Kremlin, and why is it called a station for two? The time-honored friendship, Russia and Kazakhstan in a special Kazakh TV project, Close Neighbors.